with the achievement of Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan, there was a sense that this regional integration vision was going to proceed more smoothly, I would say, one that sort of, there was a lot of odds against Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan. I remember those years in the late 1990s when I was in Washington, and a lot of people didn't believe it could happen. And so when it got on track, there was a sense that, there was progress that was going to be less fitful. There was also a sense that it was not just infrastructure, but also vision for the future, a Euro-Atlantic integration component as well. So Turkey started negotiations for accession to the EU. Georgia and Azerbaijan had become Council of Europe members in 2001. It looked like there was a rather clear direction. Now, I would say between 2005 and 2011, very roughly, this was interrupted, and this was not interrupted because of anything that Georgia or Azerbaijan did. It was the other actors, I think, that played a role in that. Turkey's sort of experiment with a new foreign policy strategy, Russia's upsurge, the relative inability of the EU to fill in for the vacuum that the US had started to leave. I mean, there were a number of reasons, but it was never Azerbaijan or Georgia that led to that faltering. And I would say it's also Azerbaijan that brought the new impetus to this integration in 2011. It was a context that was quite difficult, with Turkey focusing on north-south alongside east-west and normalizing with Armenia on the same time as pursuing Azerbaijan integration. So I think TANAP, in a sense, was a savior of the integration process between these three countries. It injected strategic relevance back to the region. It locked Turkey in strategically. And it was a much-needed victory for Turkey, foreign policy-wise as well. If you remember, 2001, 2002, 2011, 2012, 2013 has not been a period where you have a lot of success stories in Turkish foreign policy. It's been mostly a period of reality checks. So TANAP, in a way, and this whole Azerbaijan-Georgia integration process is the one thing that Turkish foreign policy can actually point to as a success of the strategic depth policy, or just sort of a neighborhood integration policy that Turkey was prioritizing. And of course, Azerbaijan's lifeline is increasingly going through Turkey and Georgia. Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan was a lifeline, but TANAP even more so. So I think the recognition in Baku that there's a need to assure the political and social alignment of these two countries is strong. And in that sense, I think the SOCAR investment in these two countries has been very, very strategic. And it's been very actually sensitive to the social dynamics and the political dynamics of these two countries. I wouldn't say the same for all of Turkey's investments. Of course, it's a little bit different, and that sometimes it's usually Turkish private sector that's involved in investing in its neighbors, and it can be much less strategic, much more extractive, much less long-term planning. So I'd sort of like to underline that there's been a mindfulness that through SOCAR investments, Azerbaijan has also made itself strategically and economically indispensable beyond the energy, hydrocarbon issue. So there's a particular, I think, economic path dependence that we can see coming about. And so it's railway, pipeline, logistics, whatnot. But the three countries are getting locked into an alignment, which the economic path dependence is like, it's impractical or costly to revert back. So things will shape around it. You'll have other sectors developing around the southern gas corridor. You'll have other networks forming. Somehow economically we're locked into each other. But it's not just economically that we're locked into each other. It's also politically and strategically. And when you look at it, I think all three countries have means to harm each other, but not without harming themselves. And so in a sense, there's some kind of a beautiful equilibrium where for our own interests, we have to work for the interest of the other. I'm not going too much into Georgia, Turkey, but I think that's a whole other success story in terms of the free trade agreement, the lifting of visas, the lifting of passports. I mean, the level of liberalism that's developed between the two countries is noteworthy. I do wish, though, that Turkish industry, that there was more effort on the Turkish side to try to develop industry and production, SMEs and whatnot in this neighborhood. Sometimes I think that Turkey doesn't maximize its potential in that sense. There are two areas of risk, if I have enough time, I'd like to focus on. I'll try to be brief. One of them, Tale and Corneli touched on this morning. I don't think that we can take for granted that infrastructure and economic exchange is necessarily going to lead to a shared vision. In the sense that is there a convergence of ideas, a shared sense of destiny, a common perception of objectives? Yes and no. I mean, compared to 15 years ago when I worked in the Azerbaijan embassy in Washington, has it changed a lot? Have we converged? Well, it's about the same. There have been ebbs, there have been flows. I don't think we really, even when you look at the opinion polls or political rhetoric, where are we going? Are we going together? I think more could be done. I think we need more informed debate, more sort of intellectual persuasion. So in Turkey, it used to be very emotional, more sort of instinctual relationship, kin, ethnic sentiments. Now it's very material. There's a very material conversation going on. But the spirit of the relationship, the soul of the relationship, needs to also be taken into consideration. Second risk that I see is the convergence of interests brought us together, but there's also a convergence of risks that are looming. True or not, I don't know, but there's like the World Economic Forum 2020, 2030 analysis say that Russia as a declining power is likely to use its leverages that it has sooner rather than later. So you can expect more trouble being caused. There's dramatic, that's one. Second, there's dramatic domestic polarization in Turkey. There are 3 elections in the next 18 months. It's not going to be pretty. Third, you have 2015 nearing. There's going to be a lot of pressure vis-a-vis 1915 on Turkey. There are already a lot of border opening studies, economic analysis, Turkey, Armenia. I think it was mentioned in the morning as well, how do you deal with this debate? I think you have a weaker and splintered government in Georgia. Again, not as solid as it may have been. And I think there's a Western appetite problem as well. I won't speak for other countries, but there's a Western appetite problem when it comes to supporting Ankara. There's an image problem that Turkey is suffering from right now. Some of it self-inflicted, some of it not. So I think 2014, 2015 are going to be difficult, and somehow passing through these years with minimum drama and trying to set up reliable coordination mechanisms is going to be important. And my final point, a very short point, ultimately this is not a bloc, it's a sub-region. I think it's very, very important, very positive, no matter what, even if Georgia becomes an EU, well, Turkey becomes an EU member, Georgia becomes an EU member, even if they go in different directions, this economic integration can only be a positive for all these countries. However, if we will develop a shared sense of destiny, then it will probably likely have to be under a Euro-Atlantic perspective. And as long as the sort of limbo, as long as we're all stuck, our EU doesn't want us, we don't want Moscow, sort of stuck in between, then we can unite. But as long as some of the countries start, Georgia, Turkey, Azerbaijan, finding themselves another pocket, then let me wrap it up. There's a window in which we need to decide whether we want to have a common sense of destiny. And that window is one that will run out after a period of time. And that was a messy ending, but I hope I could make my point. Thank you.